You're listening to the Brilliant Breakthroughs podcast with your host, Maggie Moggin.
Hi, small business owners. Welcome to the Brilliant Breakthroughs podcast, where we focus on creating brilliant breakthroughs for the small business owner. FYI, this is also the name of the #1 Amazon best-selling business book series for small businesses. It's titled Brilliant Breakthroughs for the Small Business Owner, and the subtitle is Fresh Perspectives on Profitability, People, Productivity, and Finding Peace in Your Business. You can get a digital copy or a paperback. And today, in this podcast, what we're doing is we're having a conversation about the volume 2, the second volume in the series, and that's the one with the emerald green cover. So today's conversation is with a #1 best-selling business author from the 2018 book, Susan McCuistion. And I want to say, hi, rock stars. My name is Maggie Moggin. I'm the guide today. And I'm a #1 best-selling business author as well, and the creator of this great business series that we have created for you. I'm a professional master business coach and trainer at Brilliant Breakthroughs, Inc. But let's shift the conversation right now to our guest, and that's Susan, and I'm going to say her name again, McCuistion. And the reason why I'm saying that is in this particular volume, we have 2 Susans. So welcome, Susan.
Hey, Maggie, good to be here.
Yeah, this is going to be good, and everybody's going to be blown away because you're going to share some really different points of conversation today. I can't wait. So Susan is a #1 best-selling business author as well. And in the second book, the emerald green covered book, she wrote a chapter. It's the 4th chapter, and it's called 5 Ways to Bring Compassion into Your Organization. Mm-hmm. And so far we've had a couple conversations with Susan, and she's a real dynamo about things. But I know she does something a little differently in her personal life.
Uh-oh. Maggie, don't spill the beans.
I'll only spill a couple beans, the good ones, okay?
Okay. I'll trust you with this.
Okay. I know that Susan is a fan and an advocate of Disney. And what's fascinating about this is she and her husband frequent Disney. And I'm pretty sure there's some tie-in between her focus of compassion, of diversity, and conclusion.
Pardon me. Ready? That was quick.
Yeah, well, you got your 2 seconds. And inclusion, and it all ties together. So, Susan, help us out with this, because Disney is a really fascinating place that many people enjoy, and others who haven't been there are fascinated with. Yeah. So, what's Disney about for you?
Yeah, so we love Disney. So I don't have any children, and a question I get often from friends is, why do you guys go to Disney so much? You don't have any kids. Well, it's not just for kids, but the reality is I'm a kid at heart too. So we started going years ago. You know, we're annual pass holders. We go enough to make that worth it. And I would get asked the same question by friends in my business and my industry, diversity and inclusion folks. They would say, what is it about Disney? You know, Susan, there's other places to go in the world. And my real feeling with Disney for a long time was, everybody in the world goes there, right? I mean, there's lots of, good people watching. There's lots of interacting with different cultures. Of course I go other places, but, Disney, there's always, right? There's always great interaction. Great people watching. You can have interactions, with people from all other places around the world. So that's part of it. The other thing is, I know what to expect. Some of it comes down to customer service. Truly, I know what to expect when I go to Disney. I've got enough unknowns in my life that to go someplace where I know that I'm going to have a good experience, and if anything gets messed up, they will fix it, and they fix it beyond my expectations. So there's that. And then the more we started going, and as I started doing my diversity work, just this recognition that what oh, what a good company, just a recognition of what a good company they are for diversity and inclusion. They have been on Diversity Inc.'s top 50 companies for diversity and inclusion for many years. I don't even know how many years now. But they do a really good job around representation. They're in the entertainment business, obviously. All different forms of entertainment. Um, but when I think about things like, the Black Panther movie, last summer, the biggest hit that was there, and now the biggest hit of the summer last year, and now, there's a whole bunch of Black and brown kids who have a superhero who looks just like them. And to me, it's always kind of one of those, of course, only Disney could have done that. Of course, Disney would have paid attention to that. I think, they do really good representation in not just, race, ethnicity, but in other areas as well, in terms of, abilities, in terms of, LGBT, so lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender. They're just really, really good at what they do. They're really good at just being representation overall. So I'll just kind of leave it there for now. I got a couple other examples that maybe we can talk about as we go, but I really, yeah, I'll leave it there.
Okay, well, that's a lot to digest, actually.
Yeah.
But there's something that you said that I thought was really important: customer service. Now, with that, talking about, if something wasn't correct, that they would exceed your expectations. That's great to hear, because it's really what I would expect the experience to be. It's a magical place, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I would assume that that would occur. But the other thing that what I was sensing as you were talking is it's a place where you can express yourself, even if it's something unfavorable. You could express yourself and be heard.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know what it's like in the company. But I do think, as they would say, guest, although, yeah, insider news is there's this term called treasured guest for those guests who are actually a pain in the butt. And sometimes I wonder if I haven't earned the treasured guest moniker. However, for the guests, at Disney, that's exactly what they're treated like. They are treated like guests, and any concern that you have, at least in my experience, concerns have been heard with compassion. I a couple of years ago, I was down there at spring break, and every spring break they bring down different bands to march down Main Street before the 3:00 parade comes. And there was a Texas high school that came down Main Street, and they were dressed all in Native American regalia, complete with headdresses. And that was a bit bothersome to me, because I think in this day and age, that kind of stuff just should not be happening. And it actually kind of surprised me from Disney. It is one of those things where, no company's perfect, but I do think that they should have done a little bit better filtering on who they invited, and not actually invited that high school because of that regalia. I stood in line for close to half an hour at oh gosh, what do they call? They got a special name for everything, customer service. But talk to somebody, and the manager came over and apologized and took my name, and she had been with the company for 30 years, and we were in Florida, and she had come from California, and I don't know how that happened, and gave me her personal card, and listened to my concerns with that. So I think they just do a really good job of listening and hearing, regardless of who you are. At least that's been my experience.
And that is an important thing, because that's how we build relationship.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And when I talk about compassionate diversity, it is really about understanding and seeking out different perspectives. We do not have to agree with those other perspectives, but it is important that we hear them, right? That we understand them. I can understand your perspective. I can understand where you're coming from and still not agree with you. So I think that's, for me, that see, at least in my experience of Disney, really gets embodied. Now, next to that too, I want to bring up, I talk about this, this band in Native American regalia, at the same time, every time we go to Disney, you go down Main Street, USA, and there's a cigar store Indian there, right? So,
Oh, okay.
right. So I think this leads into another idea with diversity inclusion around context. I think that cigar store Indian, that's not something I'm going to complain about to them because it's in the context. Main Street USA is about representing 1920s, Main Street, Americana, 1920s America. And that was part of the scene then. That was the context. And now, if we move it forward to today, if I'm, walking down the streets of, Chicago, New York, would I, see that? Yeah, I don't think that's appropriate. But in that context, it is appropriate. And I think that that's what we lose sight of with this work is there are certain contexts where things are appropriate, and we don't want to just wipe them away because they're not appropriate in today's context. I mean, that's like trying to change history. We have to know who we are and where we came from. And so I think, within context at Cigar Store Indian, yeah, am I thrilled with it? No, but I understand the context of it, right? I don't agree with it, and yet I understand the context of it. So I think that's important. We just passed, we're recording this in February. We just passed the Christmas holidays, big things that comes out at Christmas. And notice I said Christmas. Yes, I celebrate Christmas. Happy holidays to everybody who does not celebrate Christmas. We can talk about that next year around the holiday time. But anyway, what are the big Christmas songs? Baby, It's Cold Outside. Like the last 2 or 3 years, there has been this, uproar on social media about social media or about Me Too and date rape and things like that. And again, context, like I understand how it can upset some people, and context is a 1940s song, and there's a lot of phrases and terms in there that we just don't understand in today's context that don't mean the same thing. And so how do we really kind of balance those two perspectives? And that's to me the difficulty of this work, is that balance. How do we accept but disagree?
Right. And I think the context conversation is a much more important conversation than just about anybody is talking about in regards to this topic of diversity and inclusion, because you gave some great examples. My husband and I had this huge talk over some of the Christmas songs, and then of course there were all the spoofs of Christmas songs, and we laughed really hard, and we said, we have to remember the time. And this was how it was then. It doesn't mean that it's right or wrong. And who are we to judge it? It was the way. It was the way. And is it appropriate today? And that's my word, appropriate. Because I don't want to necessarily say good or bad. Is it appropriate or inappropriate? Today it's inappropriate because we're in a different way of being. But back then it was the appropriate model. Yeah. And I don't necessarily like to say that, but it is the fact. And the context is everything.
Oh, absolutely. And I think his last podcast, or one of these last two, we talked about discernment. Discernment is such a big part of this work. We have to be able to discern, especially the context of things, right? We have to be able to discern, where we are judging things, where our bias, we talked about bias last time, where our bias is coming in. We have to be able to, understand that, because if somebody does something today, they're bringing a whole lifetime of experience with them. And so if they jump to a conclusion about something you do today, it's not about you, right? It's about them and how they're seeing the world. And so we have to have discussions about that to better understand, well, what how did you see that? We haven't even talked about intent and impact yet. We can save that maybe for the next time. But that idea of discernment really gets to that intent and impact. I think many of us, I believe most people are really good people. I really do.
Uh-huh.
We don't wake up in the morning, every morning going, how am I going to screw somebody today? I just don't believe that. I just don't. Um,
Yeah.
However, there are things that we do, because we interact as human beings, there are going to be things that we do that have an impact on others because of their life experience and how they see it, right? And so to kind of have that grace, number one, to understand when we've stepped in it, but if we're the ones that have been imposed upon, to even have the vulnerability to say, hey, that didn't sit right with me. And then
Okay.
have a conversation about why, so that we can at least understand each other's perspectives.
Okay, I'm with you on that. And the context and perspectives leads me to another question about Disney
Yes.
that I think you can answer, because I have not been to Disney. Okay.
Wait,
And
what?
yeah, that is the
What?
truth. Uh-huh.
Okie dokie, we're gonna have to fix that one.
Okay. And one of the things that, if I were to go, I always wanted to do was go to the Epcot Center,
Uh-huh.
because I remember as a child, back in the 60s and 70s, watching over at the neighbors, because they got the color TV, watching Disney on Sunday nights. And I remember seeing a special on the Epcot Center, like for a whole night. And I was just in awe with how we were being introduced to all these different people from around the world. And back then, as children, it was a unique experience if you had that experience.
Yeah.
Most of us did not. And I was in awe with that. I said, oh man, if I ever went to Disney, that would be the one place I'd want to go first. And I love it because Disney created Epcot at a time when this was very unique, and he was introducing a different way of being to us. And um, I bet you have something to say about all this.
Oh my, yeah. Epcot is my favorite park. So Epcot, Experimental Prototype Community of Tomorrow, is what it
Okay.
stands for. Yeah, definitely my favorite park for many reasons. I'll keep some of the adult reasons to myself.
Yes, thank you.
No, great. So Epcot, yeah, it really did. The intent of it was a community. It ended up not ever, I don't think, being the community that Walt had envisioned it to be. However, it really does. The front part of the park really does, bring a lot of educational pieces to it. The back part of the park has got the world. The countries around the world and all that. So it really is a very educational park. Now, it is shifting a lot. And so, some traditionalists, there's some issues going on there. They're really trying to turn it into more of a festival park. Even when Epcot started, there was a whole discussion about, do we bring characters into this park? And when the park opened, the decision was no. So there's never any Mickey Mouse or anything like that when Epcot opened. Now that has all changed. There are, some characters that, now throughout the park, and we originally we started 2 years ago, I think. They started actually bringing character themed rides into the park. So we have the Frozen ride, and they're now building Guardians of the Galaxy ride. So, the traditionalists are kind of like, okay, well, it's not quite, not quite on par with what Epcot was supposed to be. But definitely at the time that it was built at the time that Walt envisioned it. It was definitely cutting edge in terms of bringing different communities of people together and having it more of that educational kind of background.
Okay, cool. And I love that because it's about becoming more aware of
Yeah.
differences.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess he succeeded in his intention.
Yeah. I don't
Susan,
know, they'd be thrilled with it now, but I didn't know him personally, so I can't.
well, that's the mystery, right?
Yeah.
Okay, I would love for us to keep talking, but I can't believe that our time is drawing. I know, isn't that amazing?
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. So before we wrap up this episode, and I already wrote down what we'll be talking about next time, intention and
Impact. And I didn't even get to my political correctness stuff, so we can write that one down for that one down for next time too.
Okay. Wow. Okay, we just got a preview as to what's coming up next. But what do you want us to take away? What one or two things do you want us to take away from this conversation?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I think I always go back to that idea of I don't have to agree with you to understand your perspective, right? We can understand without agreeing, but in order to do that, we have to have conversations. So that's number one. And number two is that idea of context. What is the context of the situation? And I think we have to recognize too, anytime two different people are looking at the same situation, you've got two different perspectives coming in. So there's two different perspectives on context that we're bringing as well, in addition to the actual context of what's going on. And so, this idea of context and discernment, I cannot stress that enough either.
Okay, so we need to understand that we don't have to agree, and it's okay.
Yeah, it is.
And that context is really important. And maybe until we hear what's next, we should be focusing on those 2 points and trying to find the depth and the richness of concept.
Love it.
Okay. I'm sorry, I said concept, I meant context.
Context.
Whoa. Oh my gosh, my poor mouth. It's not working right today. Okay, so context is important, and I will be super sleuthing more on that.
All right.
All right, so listeners, this is how you can learn more and engage with #1 best-selling business author Susan McCuistion. Start by reading Chapter 4 about 5 ways to bring compassion into your organization in the #1 released book and bestseller, Brilliant Breakthroughs for the Small Business Owner, and that's volume 2, the green one on Amazon. And then go ahead and gift your business's performance by accepting the invitation that Susan is offering you. At the end of her chapter, she has an author page. And at the bottom of that page, there is a really cool invitation that she has. It's relevant to you and it's free. Plus, there's all sorts of social media handles at the end of the chapter that you can connect with Susan McCuistion with too. And here's something that's really cool. Right now, you can see everything about the book and how to get a hold of it and Susan by going to the Books app, and it's a free app, Brilliant Biz Book, all one word, Brilliant Biz Book. Wow. Try that again, Brilliant Biz Book. And it's at your app store, get it. And then when you get there, scroll down, click on Ask an Expert, and you'll see Susan McCuistion's name. Click on it and type a question to her. It'll be an email and she'll reply back to you, right, Susan? You will.
Absolutely.
Okay, cool. And all of our other podcasts are there as well. So you can see all of them and get caught up on other things Susan is saying too. So listeners, we appreciate you listening to the Brilliant Breakthroughs podcast. And Susan, we appreciate you for taking your time and doing a wonderful wisdom sharing on something that's pretty relevant to folks.
Thanks so much, Maggie. I appreciate it. I have to say, this has been really fun. Anytime I can talk about Disney is cool with me.
Oh, okay, cool. Well, I'm glad we did a different twist. Okay, so check out the podcast on the app or anywhere else, because we want you to learn how to create more brilliant breakthroughs for your small business. And until we talk again next week, shine brightly, everyone.